Hi everyone, if you can hear me. I'm definitely not leaving my mug up on the screen like that, so I'll be turning my video off, but I'm here. Hope you're all okay.
We can see you, Ian, and we can hear you as well.
They turn you up slightly.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, I'll take the video off anyway, because I can see myself on the giant screen behind you. Looks a bit scary.
Right. It behoves me as the previous chair to suggest we nominate a chair for this meeting. And I'm, of course, delighted to nominate Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, just because he's not Councillor Paul Foster, who happens to be dialing in.
Mainly because.
Mainly because, sorry, not just because, mainly because. Yeah, thank you for that correction, Matthew. Would anyone like to second that nomination? Thank you. All those, any other nominations? All those in favour, please show. Any against? Congratulations, Matthew. You can carry on.
Thanks, Alistair. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for attending this meeting of Shared Services Committee. And thank you to those who are tuning in via Teams. Glad to see Councillor Foster's enjoying his night off by still tuning in and keeping his eye on us. But welcome, everybody. So just some formalities. We're not expecting a fire alarm. So if you hear one, follow me, because I'll be the first to leave and I'll take you to the nearest fire exit. Can I ask that you switch your mobile onto silent or switch it off altogether? Introductions. Do we really want to do introductions? We don't want to do introductions, do we? We're all amongst friends, and I think we all know each other. We've got a couple of substitutions. So replacing Councillor Walton is Damien. Councillor Bretherton, welcome. And Asina, you're replacing Peter Wilson. Thank you for that. And as I said, two of our members are tuning in online. Declarations of interest, the usual reminder to members of the opportunity to declare should they have a pecuniary interest. They should leave. If it's just a personal interest, if they declare it, and then we'll continue appropriately. Does anybody have any interest to declare at this time? Okay, so we'll move to the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any points of accuracy on the minutes? Everybody content? So are we happy? Yes.
It does say in the minutes, it's accurate that we're going to have a joint training session. I presume it's somewhere in the programme, and I know it's difficult to put these things this summer, much going on, but I think sooner rather than later would be a good idea.
Okay, we'll note that. We'll try and progress that. Thank you. So can I now propose those minutes for approval?
Can I second those then if you're proposing them?
Okay.
I'll second them.
And I'll sign those as soon as somebody gets them in front of me. So we'll move on to item number 5, Shared Services Monitoring Report. Chief Exec.
Thank you, Chair. So you will see that the monitoring report is attached at agenda item 5 within your packs. We have tweaked the presentation slightly as we move to more and more services being shared. We're just trying to make sure that the Shared Services Joint Committee is able to keep an overview of everything that's going on across all the shared services, but also to keep the level of depth which the committee has been used to having in terms of the development of shared services. So the proposal within this report and how it's set out is that we've given an overview in the first part of the report across all of the shared services with more detailed information around the the service focus, as we called it, for phase one, so that members will be able to see in a bit more detail than we'd otherwise manage to do if we tried to do across all. So starting with the overview. I'll skip by phase one because I'll come to that later in the report. But on phase two, within customer services, developments have been particularly focused around customer services on developing, where appropriate, joint policies. That gives us both an opportunity to review the policies for both councils, but also to develop, where appropriate, shared policies, which means that the operating model is more efficient, which you may recall was one of the principles of that were agreed as part of the extension of shared services in 2019 and onwards. So as the report sets out, the finalisation of the drafts for the local discounted premiums policy and the business rates discretionary relief policy are underway, and they're the final policies that are planned to be aligned in the service at the moment. We have also rolled out some shared technology, which I won't touch on because we've got a report on that later in the agenda, and also making use of the new telephony system. Within ICT, which has been subject to some discussion at both councils individually, but also through this committee in previous meetings, we have seen progress made, particularly around cybersecurity. So we have a cybersecurity officer now, which is a specialised role, which is relatively difficult to recruit to. They started in post a few months ago, and alongside that, we also undertook the Cyber 360 review from the Local Government Association, which is an extremely narrow peer review, which looks at our network and its security arrangements and tests it. We've got a series of recommendations from that, which we'll be implementing over the coming months and year. And then finally, in property and assets, that service has obviously been shared since the beginning of the financial year, and so a lot of the work has been focused around moving people into their new posts, them getting up to speed with the new council if they were a pre-existing employee, or both councils if they were a new appointment. And again, we're looking at aligning our policies and processes, and members will have seen via cabinet and council meetings some of that work being undertaken as we've gone out to tender or appointed new contracts, in particularly around things like utilities management, which have been flagged as issues at both councils in internal audit reports towards the end of last year. We are also on with implementing the new Civica property management system, previously known as TechForge. And again, that is taking quite a lot of work in the background to make sure that we've got all of our property records up to date and accurate. So we are putting good quality information into the systems. That's the overview of progress that's been made across all shared services. In the next couple of sections is as much here to make sure there's an opportunity for members to challenge and ask questions, albeit that it's not changed much since previous reports around the financial overview. You'll recall that we've always been clear where we aren't sharing staffing costs on a 50-50 basis, and they're set out at agenda paragraph 10, and at the moment our proposal is that they would continue on the current split. The risk register is then on agenda page 10 and onwards, with updates given on how we're getting on with the actions that were planned. Particular focus has been given to improving staff engagement or continuing to improve staff engagement, with quite a lot of work under a programme that we've called All About Us, around developing shared values for officers around how we work, and supporting people through change, as that's been one of the key issues through the expansion of shared services, is making sure that we continue with staff engagement and staff satisfaction. One thing to flag is obviously both councils are currently in their budget setting processes, and we have kept the risk of risk 6 the same at relatively low level. While both councils have significant challenges in their budget setting in this coming year, there is nothing that indicates to us that one council or the other is going to face any sort of significant financial challenges seen elsewhere in the country, and therefore it shouldn't have an impact on shared services. So moving on to the service focus, which is around phase one, which if you cast your mind back to the beginning of the pandemic, were the services that went live in April 2020, mostly the back office services. The pages on from page 12 onwards set out updates on the service delivery plans, so the plans that we set out to say how we would implement shared services in those areas. I won't go through them all, but I'll just highlight some from each. Within transformation and partnerships, we've obviously had the shared terms and conditions programme, which is well underway. The most recent being within the South Ribble Neighbourhoods and Waste Service, which has implemented the new terms and conditions. It's previously known as shared terms and conditions, but obviously doesn't make sense if we're not within a shared services to continue calling them that. So that is underway and is carrying on through the process. The next one's being building control, which obviously this committee is considered as a new shared services. And then as it sets out, planning and enforcement and spatial planning coming after that. Just to highlight HR transformation, we have increased our resource around recruitment. Recruitment to local government is becoming increasingly challenging over recent years. We now have a specialist in recruitment working within the councils. We are also about to implement our new recruitment system, which will significantly improve the experience of people who are applying for jobs and also people who are successful in securing a job with us. And then just skipping on, we have also strengthened our health and safety capacity. So that has increased over the last 12 or 18 months. And one of the key tasks that they're undertaking is a review of all of our health and safety policies to ensure that they are fit for purpose and up to date. It is one of those areas which sometimes can trip people up, because you can look and say, well, we have a lone worker policy, but actually it isn't recognising the risks as they change. And so that's a key task that they're undertaking. We've obviously shared now our culture and heritage team, the team that looks after both Astley Hall and Worden Hall, and they're in the process of reopening both of those after those significant refurbishment works at slightly different times, because the refurbishment work happened at different times. But for example, at Worden, we've just recently had our first wedding held there, with I think 5 or 6 now booked from next May as the hall will come into full operation. Moving forwards, you can then see the key indicator performance. There are 3 that are off track. One is the percentage of shared services staff satisfied, and you'll see on agenda page 22 that the staff has the explanation around that. That's taken from the last Pulse survey, so it is not new information. You have had that information before. If you recall, actually, it is not significantly dissimilar from the scores, satisfaction scores, that was for people not within shared functions, either Chorley or South Ribble, and has remained relatively constant, albeit that we have seen significant improvements in satisfaction in areas where we have previously had concern, for example, particularly customer services, which the committee has previously been concerned by. And then finally, the percentage of health and safety office inspections undertaken is lower than target, but you will see within the explanation that actually we're talking about a relatively small number. So 13 out of 16 at Chorley and 9 out of 12 have actually been undertaken. I realise, Chair, I have skipped through that, but I didn't want to talk all evening.
Thank you, Chief Exec. We do enjoy listening to you talk. Please don't be disabused of that thought. So the recommendation is for us to consider and note current progress. That doesn't mean to say we pass up on the opportunities for questions or comments. So I shall throw the Chief Executive to the mercy of members. Anybody got any questions, comments or queries? Councillor Cullen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's in connection with, and I think some other, the slightly linked agenda page 20 and relating to the percentage drop. Thought quite an interesting little bit of narrative here. It almost says because not as many people responding give us the answer that we want, which I'm sure not what it means, but how it actually reads. But just looking at the shared service, one of the issues we had with customer services was the number of calls that were being dropped and the number of calls not being answered within a certain time. And I'm sure that would be linked at one time to the dissatisfaction of the number of people in the shared service. I just wonder, Chris, if you give us an update on how that telephony is going and whether you think there's a correlation here.
I think there probably was a correlation. Certainly, some of the comments that were made in the last Pulse survey when there were more challenges was from staff within customer services was it is obviously quite disheartening to feel that you're not being able to keep up with the demand within the service, and you can see the calls stacking up, and it creates pressures for teams that are trying to do a very good job. I think it probably does help. I think we've been able to change things that we had put in place that weren't quite working. So, for example, feedback from staff said that they felt that they needed a specific training officer. So we were able to change that and bring that in. And I think that has helped. We obviously had quite a lot of apprentices, and they are now, some of them will be 12 months in to their roles. So obviously they're far more skilled in the way we do things than they would have been when they started. So again, I think that has helped. In fact, some of them have started already moving off their apprenticeships and into other roles within the organisation and within customer services. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty definite that within the Q2 performance reports at both councils, the targets that we set within the customer access charter, which we discussed here some time ago, are now being met in terms of the percentage of calls answered within less than 5 minutes. So we are absolutely moving in the right direction, and I'm pretty definite that both councils we are hitting those performance targets now.
Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, I think we definitely are at Chorley. Because we discussed it last week. I think it's on the papers for Cabinet on Thursday night, Alan, so if we want to bring it up under that. But I think we were, I think there was questions asked about whether the targets were perhaps too low, but that's always the questions when you ask set targets, whether too high, too low, or just right. So that's that item. I do think there is concern with that number dropping, and I think we would like I certainly would like some more analysis of that and some more robustness around the next set of results. That if we're going to see a number that's below our target, we understand the reasons why it's below target, because we have had concerns with that measure before. I'm less concerned with the other two that are below target, which are the ones relating to the inspections, which I presume can be caught up through the rest of the year. But the one about the satisfied staff, I think, points to back to some of the points you made around recruitment. If you can't keep the staff you have got because they're not happy, there's no point recruiting new ones. We're better off keeping the ones we've got, to be quite blunt. Aside from that, I think it's a useful update. I think the risks probably need refreshing at some point when we do that, and I don't know if they are refreshed every quarter or every half a year or every year, but I think there are some risks coming down the line that we probably need to assess as well, that are environmental risks with the way the world is at the moment and some of the uncertainty around the future. And as you mentioned, I think, Chris, about the wider local government footing in terms of finance, etc., and the fact that we won't have, it's looking like we won't have a financial advice settlement until very, very late again this year, which is, it's later and later every year. But if that could be updated, that'd be useful as well. But aside from that, Chair, I don't think I've got any real specific points. I think I'm more interested in some of the information that's behind this, which will be coming out in each individual council's scrutiny papers, etc.
Anybody else? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it is good that within the report it is acknowledged that we are now going to pause sometimes and just reflect on what has gone on. And we can learn from our mistakes, because we certainly need to just make sure that if there is something that the staff are not happy with, we do get to the bottom of that, because it's an important part of retention. On page 14, we talk about the fact that we're now around 50% of the workforce, and progress has been made in delivering the new terms and conditions for neighbourhood and waste, and we're now going to go on to planning and enforcement. I did send an email to our finance officer asking her if she could update me with the cost that these have come along with the new terms and conditions, but as yet I haven't received an answer. So I wondered if you could actually give us some information as to what are the ongoing extra costs, and certainly with the fact that looking at the budget papers for tomorrow night and the wage settlement isn't finalised yet, we're obviously picking up a lot more costs as we go along, which does tend to be a little bit concerning. And the other matter that I did actually put into my email to Louise was about, and you did mention it, that Worden Hall is now up and running and it's fully opened, and we've had the first couple of events. I wondered if she could give me or give the committee the expenditure and the income for the last 12 months, please, as regards how things are going, because originally when we went down the road, it was not to be a cost to the council, it was supposed to break even. So if it's possible to give us some indication of how that is going.
I think some of that is in tomorrow's paper that goes to scrutiny.
I have read some of it.
Yeah, certainly some of that information is in the paper that's going to scrutiny tomorrow. I wouldn't expect you to be able to give chapter and verse on that right now.
No, I don't expect it.
Councillor Smith would
as
be
I said,
happy.
that's why I actually sent an email.
We'll certainly get you a full response.
The other thing that I would just like to highlight, if I may, which is on page 18, which talks about the tourism strategy, and the council in September agreed to a procurement of an events partner for 24 to 27. I don't agree with that. I think it's wrong to have a procurement of that nature. And that's why I think the procurement training needs to come forward. And I think to actually do it that way isn't correct. And I think we should look seriously into that. That's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on page 8 under financial overview. It mentions that it's been saving in excess of £1.6 million. Just out of curiosity, when was that from? What date did that the savings start from? And what have we done with the savings?
So the 1.6 million was from the beginning of shared services, which, as Councillor Phil Smith always reminds us, was not in 2019, despite my best efforts to try and rewrite history. It was from actually 2008. And so that is from when it was from. So it includes shared financial and assurance services and then all the subsequent ones. In terms of what has happened to those savings, they have been built into the council's budget settings over those years. And so effectively, they have helped both councils to balance their budgets, particularly as austerity took place from 2010 onwards. So those savings have been taken as they have been produced.
Just another quick question. I noticed on page 18, it talks about generating income across Astley Hall. And I'm just wondering, have you identified any opportunities, what those opportunities are, and what kind of income that might be generated from Astley Hall?
So yes, so that is built into Chorley Council's budget setting, and so that was taken through the Chorley Council meetings where they were making decisions around the significant refurbishment works that have happened there. In many respects, quite similar to Worden in terms of the generation of income. A slight twist because actually it is also a museum, so it gets educational visits, but quite a lot of income generated from events and weddings and other such like kind of parties.
Okay. Anybody not in the room? Nobody's indicating either. No. Anybody from the floor? Nope. Okay, so again, as I said earlier, we're asked to consider and note current progress. So current progress is so noted, and we'll move on to the next agenda item 6, which came under separate covers. So for those of you on modern.gov, it's a separate item. For those of you who've got paper, you should have a separate item on ICT. Chief Exec.
Thank you. Members will recall that as part of actually the first phase of shared services, we started to develop a shared digital strategy. And then as we shared the ICT function itself, we also agreed that we were it would be beneficial to both councils to align ICT systems as much as possible, following the principles that were set out on agenda page 28, which includes things like a cloud-first strategy. What that means is that we don't need to then hold data on-premise. We don't need servers, which we then have to back up if the information is held within the cloud. The responsibility of backups and other security lie with the organisation that we're working with, to also make sure that we're compliant with UK GDPR regulations. What that means is we've got to be cognizant of where data is being sent and saved, and so that we are able to assure people that it isn't going into places internationally that people wouldn't want their data saving. And making sure that we're maximising the use of all of the systems that we've got, so we don't potentially have lots of very bespoke systems when actually we could have a single system that could be maximised to it. So we had a procurement plan, a procurement strategy that was developed and agreed in 2021, and the team have been on with implementing that, and that is set out in the table on agenda page 29 and 30. You will note that most of those things are complete, and just to highlight some of them, we have implemented a shared approach to our community management system. Now, actually, both councils had ModGov in place already, but we've been able to procure that into a cloud-based platform, which makes the systems more resilient in terms of not backups and also access. We have also started moving some significant line of business applications into a shared platform, so revenues and benefits. Again, both councils had Capita, but we have negotiated a new contract that runs to 2027. And includes significant automation, which means that our staff are able to then support people actually in their revenues and benefits queries, rather than them doing lots of processing, which would otherwise take quite a lot of manual intervention. I will also just flag up actually what I think is probably some of the benefits of shared services and having a shared IT system, in that we have also implemented new telephony system, and I can give a real world example of why that is beneficial. When we roll back a few months and there were issues with neighbouring properties, which meant that this building was held within a police cordon for pretty much a whole day. What we were able to do is flip across the telephony. We were able to answer calls over at Chorley and from people working at home, so that actually both councils were able to continue to provide a service, which if we hadn't had the shared service, in reality South Ribble would have become unavailable for contact for most of the day from our residents. So it is a real world example of actually how you can we can make use of the shared service. Another example is actually that there was a power outage very briefly on election day, on polling day at South Ribble, and we had issues because we needed to do printing, given that elections are still very reliant upon pieces of paper. And again, whilst we had issues within this building, we were able to use the follow you or follow me printing and print things over at Chorley, which meant that actually we were able to continue with our service with no issues. Other issues that I've already flagged up is the recruitment system. Again, both councils going out individually for their recruitment system would be actually pretty pricey, and us being able to procure that jointly means we've been able to do a better offer. We can also, frankly, do a better offer then to people who are looking for jobs with us, because we can actually maintain that system. And we have also started the very big job of the property management system, which is a considerable piece of work and a considerable undertaking, but actually both councils desperately need that system to work properly, to make sure that we are both compliant with our statutory obligations and can demonstrate that, but also to make sure that we are maximising the use of our assets. We are clear when leases come up, we are clear when there are rent reviews, and we are maximising all of that. Both councils have struggled with that in the past, and having a shared approach means that we're better able to maximise the use of that system. We will be able to present to the committee in future meetings a running tracker of the costs and savings of these systems. We're just pulling that together now. In reality, actually, there haven't been massive, significant cashable savings to a lot of this work, but that's partially because actually the cost of IT has considerably increased over recent years. And actually what we've been able to do is, by and large, maintain the cost of our systems within our individual budgets. So it's not a cashable saving, but what it has done is prevent us having significant budget pressures within both councils. It would be remiss of me not to point out that the Director of Customer and Digital keeps on warning us that IT costs continue to increase, and so it is a continuing threat to both councils. That's me.
Okay, thank you. A couple of points from me, I guess. We've always said, haven't we, that shared services isn't just about saving money. It is about building resilience in teams that have been stretched over the years for different reasons. And so those two real world, as you said, Colin, those two real world examples are a really good way of showing how shared services can build that resilience. So when we are stretched and when we are under pressure, we're better able to respond to that. And also, I mean, they're not easily identified as cashable savings, so they won't show in the 1.6 million that Councillor Bretherton asked about, but they are undoubtedly savings. Might not be easy to measure, but they are undoubtedly savings that we are able to make because of shared services. Okay, again, this is just for noting, but again, questions, queries, comments from members of the committee. Councillor Cullen.
Yeah, thanks very much. Two questions really. One of them, Chris, is around one of the difficulties always been back to my HR art as IT and staffing has always been an issue, and it doesn't matter where you are in this country now, it's still a significant issue. But it's noticeable how many more systems that we're actually taking on and in the new contracts and trying to redevelop. What's the pressure like now on the IT team? And have we got the capacity to manage the new systems as they come on? I'll have a second question later.
So the IT team are still pressured. It is still a team that has vacancies within it. And whilst we've managed to recruit to some hard to recruit to posts, as I highlighted earlier around the cybersecurity officer, there are still vacant posts. It is pressured probably in two different ways. One is around just the help desk element. We've got a lot of users, and IT will sometimes politely point out that users are quite often quite hard work, and that takes quite a lot of management. And so we have started to make some changes around that, and we will be recruiting a help desk manager. And then the other side is in those business systems, the line of business applications. Now, we have increased our capacity within there, but there are still gaps on that side. We are going to review how we best target recruiting that resource. As Asim would point out, that if you are a specialist in, for example, iDocs, you are likely to be working for iDocs and getting paid considerably more than what we can offer. But what we can do is what we're doing, for example, within the the Civica Property Management project, which is we have other people sitting, for example, within the transformation and change team who can do the project management and can do the work around getting records digitised and all the rest of it. So we're putting on other support in to make sure that those IT people can then concentrate on that specialist bit. So I think the answer is yes, they're still pressured, but they are still managing to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Just a second, well, it's not the second question, but the second part of that one is around that. You're right, the expertise is within that. In the contracts that we now negotiate, now we also taking in the customer support elements to it and the ongoing support that we can buy into that if needed.
Yes, which sometimes can be still slightly rocky because you're then you're slightly beholden to their customer service within those companies. But yes, where it's appropriate, we're building that in. So an example would be, for example, is iDocs have bought up the company, or some time ago bought up the company that runs election systems. They now do our upgrades rather than it being managed in-house.
Thanks, Matthew. Just on the same question, and I know Alistair gets this from his own group and within our member support. One of the areas that seems to be getting left behind, I think, a little bit of members. A lot of effort going into a lot of new systems. I hear it from them, especially a lot of, I'll describe some of the younger members who feel that there is a drop behind on the IT support and the IT that members actually get.
And I think that's a fair point. I think it's something that Athen would probably agree with, and we do try to change how we manage it. So, for example, at both councils, we'll have iPad clinics to try and make sure that we're making best use of the time and capacity that we've got available, and we'll continue to do that. There is also, where it probably links to the point I was making earlier around the help desk, and actually that hasn't got the resources that we'd want within it, and it does have an impact. There are other things that certainly some members would like to see around things, for example, like case management systems, which are ongoing conversations with the relevant member support working groups.
I'd be really interested to see the Venn diagram of hard work customers and members, just to see where the intersection is. That would be a very interesting piece of work.
What about leaders?
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I think it's the last item on page 30, the asset management. And I think that is also reported in the budget scrutiny report tomorrow. And I did read some of it, not all of it, but I did read some of it, which I found very interesting, because obviously this is an area that we have fallen down with quite badly in some areas. But I think I read within that report that it's going to take about 18 months to actually get it fully operational, which seems an awful long time when we're talking about review of rents and various utilities and all those sorts of things. I know it's very complex and a lot of people, a lot of areas involved, but does it need more capacity, do you think, to get it actually moving faster, or is the capacity within the company that is actually providing the service to us?
So it's both. But it is also that actually it's partially around just making sure that we have the time to make sure that the quality of the information going into the system is right. And the reality is that the way in which both councils have managed their data previously means that quite a lot is in people's heads. And so even if you massively increase the amount of capacity you've got, you will still have bottlenecks of people who actually need to be tested and make sure that actually that information is right. And that is that we won't get just the benefits at the end of the 18 months. We will get the benefits as and when we're implementing the elements. So we're trying to phase the project to make sure that we're prioritising the elements that will bring us either the greatest benefit or the things that we need to bring on quickly from a risk management point of view. Just to highlight, it's partially around wording, but on that bottom of page 30, when we talk about asset management and Yotta actually refers to our other assets, which is neighbourhoods and street scene speak for bins. And so that we've mapped. So some of that will take quite a long time, because actually, again, it's physically going out to bins, trees, all of the various bits of things that we have across the borough to make sure they are actually plotted, and we know what type of bin is it, what capacity is it, what round is it on, and all those different elements. So there are some things that actually it just takes time just to work through, and we'll bring it in as quickly as we can, but still trying to make sure it's accurate.
As I was the cabinet member for assets for the last 4 years, I found this incredibly frustrating. Accepting COVID and personnel changes and all that. If this is done in 18 months, I'll be delighted, and I'm really pleased at the progress that we are now making, because I tried so hard to sort this out and ran out of time. But I'll be delighted when it's done. Councillor Bradley.
To Chorley use Yotta now? So are we fully up to, have we got more work to do on Yotta, or is it in place fully?
I think we're pretty much in place at Chorley, and what we will be able to do when that project is being implemented at South Ribble is actually, rather than having to set up the whole system, we can actually basically steal from actually how's it set up, and then it's just about the implementation.
Because that's what I remember. I think when it was brought in, I didn't know it was Yotta, but it might have been called something else then. It was getting off that paper-based system, because paper-based systems, by their very nature, paper-based systems that we used to have were different in every department, so you didn't have a uniform approach, and that was the biggest problem we had. So it does take time, mainly because when you ask people where they have their asset, which is what you're alluding to as well, and they've got it in a different format. Every department's got it in a different format, because one department has trees, one department has bins, one department has God knows what. That's where it falls down. It's not so much the actual system itself, it's the how do you get this information in there. And I think that was the problem from memory that we had at Chorley when we put it on. So if you can borrow some of the templates, that's half the battle, because that's what I was just thinking as you were talking, because that templating was the issue.
I think that is the benefit of shared services, the fact that we can learn from each other and we can help each other out. And I think it was very interesting when Chris told us about the 2 examples he could show us that are live, if you will, and have helped tremendously. I think that is the benefit of shared services. I really do.
Yeah, agreed. Councillor Belinsky-Gelder did indicate.
Yeah, thanks. I think Chris kind of inferred this in his reply about Yotta, but the Yotta is asset management for neighbourhoods, and the Tech Forge is for property. So there's 2 different distinct asset management systems that we're going to be implementing. And the one that you're referring to about scrutiny tomorrow, that's one that's going to take 18 months with the new staff and the new resources. I just wanted to make it clear that there's 2 different ones, and the Yotta isn't mentioned in the one tomorrow night.
Okay. Questions, comments from the floor? People dialing in? Any comments or questions? Nope. Okay. So again, what is noted. I've not been informed of any urgent business. Can we confirm the date and time of the next meeting, please, just before we all depart?
Get more vague.
The 9th January.
Okay, so all in your diaries. I won't ask. Yeah. Good up. I hope you have a nice time. With that, I thank you all for your attendance and your contributions. Thank you to the people at home listening on YouTube, and I wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks a lot.